Ambassador Minjun Park stood in the massive council chamber of Zenith Prime Station and tried not to show his frustration. The chamber was beautiful, with walls that seemed to be made of liquid starlight and seats arranged in circles that went up toward the domed ceiling. Representatives from 200 species sat in those seats. Minjun represented Earth and humanity. The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for 12,000 years. They made laws, settled disputes, and decided how resources would be shared across thousands of worlds. When humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago, the Council had welcomed them. But Earth was given the status of junior member with limited voting power. Minjun had learned to accept this, even though it felt wrong. Today's session was about the Kalari, an aquatic species that had just invented FTL drives 3 months ago. Their homeworld, Kala, was covered mostly by oceans of crystal blue water. The Kalari themselves were graceful beings who looked like a cross between dolphins and octopi, with intelligent eyes and gentle natures. Minjun had met their diplomat, Talim, last week. She had seemed so hopeful about joining the galactic community. That hope was about to be crushed. High Magistrate Vorn of the Thexian Imperium stood at the central podium. The Thexians were tall, with scaled skin that shimmered in shades of gold and bronze. Vorn's voice boomed through the chamber. The Council recognizes that Kela possesses significant deposits of teresium, which is essential for FTL drive construction. Under Article 47 of the Resource Management Act, the Council will establish regulatory oversight of Kalari mining operations. Minjun felt his jaw tighten. He had read Article 47 many times. It sounded official and fair, but it was really just a way for powerful Council species to take control of valuable resources from newer, weaker members. Beside him, Dr. Su-Yan Kim, his chief aide, whispered, "It's happening again. Just like with the Myrani 40 years ago." Minjun nodded slightly. The Myrani, an insectoid species with beautiful wing patterns, had discovered teresium on their world too. Within a year of joining the Council, Myrani miners were working in their own mines, but seeing almost none of the profits. Council corporations controlled everything. Minjun pressed the button to request speaking time. A soft chime sounded. Vorn looked at him with barely concealed annoyance. "The chair recognizes the Earth delegation." Minjun stood and walked to the lower podium reserved for junior members. "Thank you, High Magistrate. Earth would like to raise concerns about this proposal. The Kalari have only just achieved FTL capability. Imposing resource regulations immediately seems premature. Perhaps we should allow them time to develop their own mining infrastructure and economic systems." Councillor Zaref of the Vorquan Collective made a sound that the translation device rendered as dismissive laughter. The Vorquans were beings of pure energy, contained in crystalline shells. "Ambassador Park, your species' idealism is well known but impractical. The Kalari lack the experience to efficiently extract teresium. Council oversight ensures proper resource utilization for the benefit of all galactic civilization." "Benefit of all, or benefit of those who control the extraction?" Minjun asked quietly. The chamber went very quiet. Several councillors shifted in their seats. No one spoke to the Council's senior members this way. Vorn's eyes narrowed. "Ambassador, your insinuation is noted and inappropriate. The Council has maintained galactic order and prosperity for 12 millennia. Earth has been a member for merely 2 centuries. Perhaps you should trust in systems that existed long before your species left your home world." Minjun wanted to argue more, but he knew it was pointless. The vote was called. The resolution passed easily, with only Earth and a handful of other junior members voting against it. Talim, watching from the observer's gallery, seemed to shrink in her containment tank of water. Minjun caught her eye and saw the hope dying there. After the session, Minjun returned to Earth's embassy suite on the station. Su Yan was already at her desk, pulling up files on her holographic display. "I've been going through our records from the past 50 years, she said. "We have documented 17 cases similar to the Kalari situation. Species join the council, they have valuable resources, and within months they're locked into exploitative regulatory frameworks." "Documented but not proven," Minjun said, sitting heavily in his chair. "We have patterns, but we've never been able to show that it's deliberate policy rather than just unfortunate coincidence." His communication terminal chimed. It was Captain Jiwoo Choi of the survey ship Witness, currently stationed near the edge of council space. Jiwoo's face appeared on the screen, and she looked excited. "Ambassador, I think we found something. We've been scanning old council data archives, the public ones that anyone can access. But we used some new analysis algorithms, and we found gaps, deleted files, thousands of them." Minjun sat forward. "Deleted from public archives?" "Yes, sir. And we were able to recover fragments. They're council internal communications from the last 300 years. The fragments we've reconstructed so far show council leadership discussing how to identify resource-rich pre-FTL civilizations and slow down their development until the resources are needed." Su-Yan gasped. "They're deliberately holding species back?" "That's what it looks like," Jiwoo confirmed. "We need more time to recover the full files, but what we have is already damning. They've been doing this systematically. It's not coincidence, it's policy." Minjun felt something shift inside him. For 200 years, humanity had played by the Council's rules. They had been patient, they had been diplomatic, they had objected to injustices, but always within proper channels. And they had been ignored, dismissed, and patronized. "How long until you can compile a complete evidence package?" he asked Jiwoo. "2 weeks, maybe 3. Do it. Be thorough. We're only going to get one chance at this." Minjun ended the call and looked at Su-Yan. "Contact Talim. Arrange a private meeting somewhere secure. Don't use official channels." "What are you planning?" Su-Yan asked. Minjun thought about the hope dying in Talim's eyes. He thought about the Mirani working in their own mines for poverty wages. He thought about every species the Council had exploited while claiming to bring order and prosperity to the galaxy. He thought about Earth's 2 centuries of watching and documenting, and politely objecting while nothing changed. "We've been quiet long enough," he said softly. "It's time the Council learned that human patience shouldn't be mistaken for acceptance. It's time we stopped asking for permission to do what's right." Su-Yan smiled slowly. "You're going to protect the Kalari anyway, aren't you? Regardless of what the Council says." "I'm going to do more than that," Minjun replied. "I'm going to make sure every species in this galaxy knows exactly what the Council has been doing. And then we're going to give them a choice. A real one." Outside the embassy windows, Zenith Prime Station glittered against the stars, beautiful and cold. Inside, humanity had just decided to stop playing by rules designed to keep them powerless. The galaxy was about to change, whether the Galactic Council wanted it to or not. The meeting took place in a small cafe on the lower levels of Zenith Prime, far from the gleaming council chambers. Ta'alim floated in a portable water tank that Minjun had arranged to be brought to the private room. Her tentacles moved in patterns that the translator interpreted as nervous hope. "Ambassador Park, I appreciate you reaching out," Ta'alim said through the device attached to her tank. "But I do not understand what you can offer. The Council's decision is final." Minjun leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. "What if I told you that Earth is prepared to offer the Kalari full economic partnership, free technology sharing, protection for your trade routes, and sanctuary if you need it? No regulations, no council oversight, no strings attached." Talim's tentacles went very still. "That would be direct violation of council policy. Earth could face sanctions." "Let them sanction us," Su-Yan said from her seat beside Minjun. We've been preparing for this possibility. Earth is self-sufficient in all major resources. We've been quietly building relationships with dozens of independent systems outside Council control. They can't hurt us economically. But why would you do this? Talim asked. What does Earth gain? The chance to do what's right, Min-Jun said simply. We're tired of watching the Council exploit species who can't defend themselves. Starting with the Kalari, we're going to offer an alternative. 3 days later, Min-Jun stood before the Galactic Council again. This time, he had requested the floor. Vorn looked at him with open suspicion as Min-Jun approached the podium. Earth wishes to announce a new initiative, Min-Jun said clearly. Effective immediately, we are establishing formal economic and defense partnerships with the Kalari people. Earth vessels will escort Kalari trade ships through all space lanes, including those the Council has designated as regulated zones. We will share our technology freely to help the Kalari develop their own mining and manufacturing capabilities. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Vorn's scales flushed a deep bronze color that indicated anger. This is completely unacceptable. The Council has already established regulatory frameworks for Kalari resources. Earth has no authority to interfere. We're not interfering, Min-Jun replied calmly. We're simply offering friendship and support to a sovereign species. The Kalari are free to accept or decline. They've accepted. This is a direct challenge to Council authority. Zaref's crystalline form blazed with angry light. There will be consequences. Then impose them, Min-Jun said. Earth will not stand by while you exploit innocent species. Not anymore. The vote for sanctions against Earth was called immediately. It passed, but not unanimously. 5 junior member species abstained, which was itself unprecedented. As Min-Jun left the chamber, he saw representatives from the Mirani, the Dulcrans, and several other junior species watching him with expressions he recognized. They were calculating whether they dared to hope. Over the next 2 months, that hope grew into action. Min-Jun issued open invitations to all junior species interested in what Earth was now calling the Free Species Alliance. The response was overwhelming. The Mirani were the first to accept formally. Their representative, a gentle being named Crix, whose wings shimmered with patterns of purple and gold, met with Min-Jun privately. For 40 years, we have worked our own mines and seen our people stay poor while Council corporations grow wealthy, Crix said, his antennae trembling with emotion. We thought this was simply the way of things, that we were too small, too new to the galaxy to deserve better. You deserve equality, Suyon told him. Every species does. We're going to prove that a different system is possible. The Dulcrans joined next. Then the Orvesh, a species of small mammalian traders who had been marginalized by Council economic policies for decades. Within 3 months, the Free Species Alliance had 17 members. Earth's shipyards worked constantly, building escort vessels to protect their new partners' trade routes. Suyon led teams of human scientists and engineers to member worlds, helping them develop infrastructure without taking control or demanding payment. The Council watched with growing alarm. Their economic sanctions against Earth had failed completely. Worse, they were starting to see the real impact of the alliance. Mirani Teritium, sold at fair prices through alliance trade networks, was undercutting Council corporate monopolies. Dulcran artists, free to create without Council censorship guidelines, were producing work that was becoming popular across the galaxy. The Orvesh, sharing trade routes with Earth's merchant fleet, were opening new markets that bypassed Council taxation entirely. High Magistrate Vorn called an emergency session. The so-called Free Species Alliance is destroying galactic order, he declared. They are encouraging lawlessness and undermining systems that have maintained peace for millennia. The Council must act decisively. But the Council was fracturing. The Relathi Confederation, one of the older member species, had begun questioning council policies publicly. Their matriarch Sheena stood at her podium and said something that shocked everyone. Perhaps it is time we asked whether our systems truly serve all species equally or only those who wrote the rules. Vorn looked like he had been struck. Matriarch, you cannot be seriously suggesting that this human rabble-rousing has merit? I'm suggesting that when 17 species leave an organization within 3 months, we should examine our own behavior rather than simply condemning theirs, Sheena replied. The debate raged for hours. In the end, the hardliners won. The Council voted to blockade trade routes between Alliance members and Council space. Council naval vessels, the peacekeepers who supposedly maintained galactic order, began stopping and searching ships traveling to Alliance worlds. Captain Jiwoo Choi was ready. Her network of survey ships had spent months preparing for this. They had mapped every deleted file, every hidden communication, every piece of evidence showing the Council's systematic exploitation. The data was stored on servers across 24 independent systems, ready to be broadcast. But before they could release it, something terrible happened. A Kalari civilian transport, carrying families between Keela and a new Alliance colony, was stopped by a Thexian peacekeeper vessel. The Thexian captain demanded the Kalari submit to inspection and turn back. The Kalari captain, operating in what should have been neutral space, refused. The Thexian ship opened fire. 847 Kalari died. 312 of them were children. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Council's official statement called it a tragic but necessary enforcement action against those who refuse legitimate authority. They claimed the Kalari ship had been carrying weapons. Su Yan watched the footage from the incident that Alliance ships had recorded. She saw the Kalari transport torn apart by weapons fire. She saw the emergency pods jettisoned too late. She saw the bodies floating in space, small ones among them. She looked up at Minjun with tears in her eyes. "They murdered children, and they're calling it legitimate," she whispered. Minjun's face was like stone. "No more waiting. Release everything, every file, every recording, every piece of evidence we have. Show the entire galaxy exactly who the Council really is." Jiwoo's ships began broadcasting. The data flooded across every communication network in Council space. Deleted files showing Council leaders discussing how to identify and exploit resource-rich species. Financial records proving that Council members received personal payments from the corporations they were supposed to regulate. Communications planning how to keep junior species dependent and weak. Recordings of Council meetings where leaders laughed about the naivety of species who believed in the Council's stated ideals. And images of those Kalari children floating dead in space, while the Council called it necessary. The galaxy began to burn with rage. The Galactic Council chamber looked the same as always, but everything had changed. Minjun could see it in how the counselors sat, in the clusters they formed, in the careful distances some maintained from others. The release of the deleted archives had split the council right down the middle. High Magistrate Vorn stood at his podium, his scales the color of dark bronze. Around him sat the hardliners, species whose power and wealth came from the current system. The Vorquan Collective, the Krenth Dominion, the Saxari Hegemony. They had the most to lose if the Council's authority crumbled. On the opposite side, Matriarch Sheena of the Rilathi sat with what were being called the Moderates, the Fennec Coalition, the Darashi Republic, and a dozen smaller species who were clearly uncomfortable with what the archives had revealed. They hadn't left the Council, but they were asking dangerous questions. This emergency session is called to address Earth's unprecedented release of classified Council materials, Vorn began. His voice was cold and formal. These documents, obtained through illegal means, have been disseminated across the galaxy in a clear attempt to undermine legitimate galactic governance. Min Jun stood at the junior member podium. He didn't wait to be recognized. High Magistrate, those documents were deleted from public archives. They were hidden from the very citizens the Council claims to serve. The only thing illegal here is what those documents reveal. You have no proof the documents are authentic, Zaraf said, the Vorquan's crystalline form pulsing with agitated light. They could be fabrications designed to sow discord. Suyan activated a holographic display above Min Jun's podium. We have authentication codes embedded in the original files. We have timestamps that match Council server records. We have voice patterns verified against public recordings of Council members. Unless you're suggesting that Earth somehow fabricated 12,000 years of Council history and perfectly matched it to your own systems, these documents are genuine. Several moderate councilors nodded. They had clearly been doing their own verification. The hardliners looked increasingly angry. Councilor Thrace of the Krenth Dominion, a species that looked like armored bears, slammed his fist on his console. Even if the documents are real, you had no right to steal them. The Council has secrets for good reasons. Galactic governance is complex. The common citizen cannot understand the difficult decisions we must make. The common citizen understands that you've been exploiting them while pretending to protect them. Min Jun shot back. They understand that you've been keeping species deliberately weak so you can profit from their resources. They understand that when a transport full of children was murdered, you called it necessary. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Vorn let it continue for a moment, then called for order. Earth will face consequences for this action. I am calling for a vote on immediate expulsion from the Galactic Council. But even as he spoke, something was happening outside the chamber. On 40 council worlds, citizens were gathering in protest. On the Vorquan homeworld, energy beings were refusing to work in the corporate centers that had profited from exploiting junior species. On Thexia, younger members of the population were demanding their leaders answer for the deaths of those Kalari children. Communication networks were flooded with messages demanding council reform. Matriarch Sheena stood at her podium. She was old, even for a Relathi, and her feathers had faded to pale gray. But her voice was strong. Before we vote on expulsion, I have questions that demand answers. High Magistrate Vorn, were you aware of the systematic policies to suppress junior species development? Vorn's scales rippled. This is not the time for... Answer the question, Sheena interrupted. Several councilors gasped. No one interrupted the High Magistrate. Galactic governance requires difficult decisions, Vorn said carefully. Sometimes we must prioritize stability over individual species' ambitions. That's not an answer, Sheena pressed. Did you know that the Council was deliberately holding back species development to maintain exploitative economic arrangements? The Council has always acted in the best interests of galactic civilization as a whole, Vorn replied. Again, not an answer. Sheena turned to address the entire chamber. I have reviewed the documents Earth released. I have verified their authenticity, and I am appalled. For 3,000 years, the Relathi have been proud council members. We believed in the ideals of cooperation and mutual prosperity. Now I discover those ideals were lies told to keep the powerful in power. Zaraf's form blazed. Matriarch, you are allowing Earth's propaganda to cloud your judgment. The Council has maintained galactic peace for 12 millennia. Peace built on the suffering of those too weak to resist, Sheena replied. That's not peace. That's oppression, with a pretty name. The vote was called. But before it could proceed, something unprecedented happened. The Relathi Confederation formally abstained from voting. Then the Fennec Coalition followed. Then the Darashi. Then species after species declined to participate in the vote. Vorn looked stunned. This vote requires a quorum. All council members must participate. Then perhaps you should have considered that before asking us to expel the only species brave enough to tell the truth, Sheena said. Min Jun watched as the council descended into chaos. Counselors were shouting at each other. Some were calling for Vorn's removal. Others were defending the old systems desperately. The unity that had held the council together for 12,000 years was crumbling in real time. Meanwhile, Jiwoo's ships continued broadcasting. The evidence kept spreading, but now they were adding new material. Footage of the Kalari children who had died, showing them playing and learning before the attack. Interviews with Mirani workers who had spent their lives in poverty while mining wealth from their own world. Images of Dulcran art that had been censored because it made council members uncomfortable. The broadcasts weren't just about exposing corruption anymore. They were about showing the galaxy the real cost of that corruption in lives destroyed and potential wasted. On Earth itself, the planetary government was preparing. The Council's economic sanctions had already failed, but there was always the possibility of military action. Earth's defense fleet, built quietly over 2 centuries, moved to high-alert positions. Humanity had been patient, but they weren't naive. They had always known this day might come. But the military response didn't come from the Council. It came from Vorn acting on his own authority. 3 Thexian battle groups moved toward Alliance space, claiming they were going to restore order to regions destabilized by Earth's insurrection. Captain Jiwoo watched the Thexian ships on her sensors. The Witness was a survey vessel, lightly armed, no match for a battle group, but she wasn't alone. 12 Earth defense ships had joined her, along with vessels from the Kalari, the Mirani, and other Alliance members. They formed a defensive line in neutral space between the Thexian fleet and the nearest Alliance world. The Thexian commander sent a message demanding they disperse. Jiwoo replied with 2 words: "Make us." For 3 days, the fleets faced each other. The entire galaxy watched, holding its breath. If the Thexians attacked, it would be war. If they backed down, it would show the Council's authority was broken. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. 5 of the Thexian ships broke formation and turned back. Their crews, many of whom came from junior species serving in the Thexian military, refused to fight. They had seen the broadcasts. They had seen what the Council really was. They wouldn't fire on people defending the right to be free. The remaining ships, now outnumbered, withdrew. No shots were fired. But everyone understood what had happened. The Council had tried to use force to maintain control, and its own military had refused to follow orders. Back in the Council chamber, Vorn was surrounded by angry counselors demanding explanations. His attempt to use military force without Council approval had been illegal. The failure of that force had been humiliating. And across the galaxy, 3 more species formally announced they were leaving the Council to join the Free Species Alliance. Min-jun stood at his podium and watched the chaos. Suyon leaned over and whispered, "Do you think they understand yet?" "Some do," Min-jun replied quietly. "They're starting to realize that we didn't retaliate with weapons or economic warfare. We retaliated with something much more powerful." "Truth," Suyon said. "Truth," Min-jun agreed. "And they have no defense against it." The emergency session had been going for 6 hours. The Galactic Council chamber, once a symbol of unity and order, now felt like a battlefield. Counselors shouted accusations at each other, while their aides scrambled to manage the crisis exploding across their home worlds. High Magistrate Vorn stood at the central podium, trying to maintain control, but his scales had lost their golden shimmer and taken on a dull, defeated color. Around him, the hardliner coalition was fracturing. The Vorquan Collective was blaming the Thexian Imperium for the military embarrassment. The Krenth Dominion was accusing both of pushing too hard, too fast. The unity of the powerful was breaking down as each species tried to save itself from the public fury. Min-jun watched from the junior member section. He had said very little during this session. He didn't need to. The galaxy was speaking for him now. "Order!" Vorn's voice boomed through the chamber. We must proceed with the vote on Earth's expulsion. Despite the abstentions, we have enough members present to form a quorum. Matriarch Sheena stood slowly. Her movements had the weight of great age and greater sorrow. High Magistrate, I must speak before any vote is taken. Matriarch, you have already made your position abundantly clear, Vorn said tightly. Have I? Sheena's voice was soft, but carried clearly through the chamber. I said I was appalled by what the archives revealed, but I have not yet said what the Rilathi Confederation intends to do about it. The chamber went very quiet. The Rilathi were one of the oldest and most respected council members. Their decision would influence many others. Sheena looked around the chamber, her gaze touching each counselor. For 3,000 years, we believed in this institution. We thought the Galactic Council represented the highest ideals of civilization: cooperation, mutual benefit, peaceful resolution of conflicts. We were proud to be members. We taught our children that the Council made the galaxy safe and fair. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was heavy with pain. We were wrong. Or rather, we were lied to. This institution does not serve the galaxy's people. It serves those who already have power. It maintains a system where the strong exploit the weak and call it order, where murder of children is justified as necessary enforcement, where keeping entire species in poverty is called resource management. Vorn's scales flushed dark. Matriarch, these are serious accusations. They are facts, Sheena cut him off again. Facts documented in your own archives. Facts you tried to hide. Facts that Earth had the courage to reveal when we did not. She turned to look directly at Minjun. Ambassador Park, the Rilathi Confederation formally apologizes to humanity. For 200 years you tried to tell us something was wrong with the Council's systems. We dismissed you as naive. We told you that you were too new to understand how galactic governance worked. We were the naive ones. We mistook your patience for weakness. We mistook your idealism for ignorance. Minjun stood and bowed his head slightly in acknowledgement. Matriarch, the past matters less than what we do now. Then hear what we do now, Sheena said. She turned back to address the full council. The Rilathi Confederation hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We will seek membership in the Free Species Alliance, if they will have us. We would rather stand with those who tell uncomfortable truths than those who hide comfortable lies. The chamber erupted. Councilors were on their feet, some shouting in anger, others in shock. The Fennec Coalition representative stood and announced they too were withdrawing. Then the Darashi. Then species after species, some of whom Minjun had never expected to act, declared they were leaving. Vorn tried to call for order, but his voice was lost in the chaos. He looked desperately at Zareth and the other hardliners, but they were dealing with their own crises. The Vorquan homeworld was experiencing massive protests that were shutting down their corporate centers. 3 Krenth colony worlds had declared independence from the Dominion government. Minjun pressed the button to request speaking time. This time, he didn't wait for recognition. He simply walked to the main podium, the one usually reserved for senior council members only. Several councilors started to object, but others were too stunned by the mass exodus to care about protocol. Members of the Galactic Council, Minjun said, his voice calm and clear. For 200 years we watched. We documented. We asked you to change. You called us naive, idealistic, weak. You mistook our patience for acceptance. You mistook our hope for ignorance. He paused and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many counselors as he could. Today we stop asking. Today we show the galaxy who you really are. Not through military force, not through economic warfare, but through truth. Simple, undeniable truth about what you have done in the name of galactic order. Vorn found his voice. You have destroyed 12,000 years of galactic unity. No, Min Jun replied firmly. You destroyed it yourselves when you chose exploitation over cooperation, when you chose profit over justice, when you murdered 847 innocent beings and called it necessary. We simply held up a mirror and made you look at what you had become. He activated the holographic display at the podium. Images began to appear in the air above him. A Kalari child, maybe 6 years old by human reckoning, smiling at the camera. A Mirani worker, wings tattered from years in the mines, holding a piece of tericium worth more than they would earn in a lifetime. A Dulcran artist whose beautiful crystalline sculptures had been destroyed because they depicted concepts the council found subversive. These are the people you hurt, Min Jun said quietly. These are the lives you destroyed or diminished so you could maintain power. And you wonder why we retaliated? You wonder why we chose to expose what you had hidden? More images appeared. Families on dozens of worlds celebrating as they learned about the Free Species Alliance. Mirani miners forming their own cooperative and sharing profits equally. Kalari students learning to build their own FTL drives instead of buying them from council corporations at inflated prices. Dulcran art spreading across the galaxy, finally free to express itself fully. This is what happens when species are free, Min Jun continued. This is what you tried to prevent. Not because it would harm the galaxy, but because it would harm your control over the galaxy. He deactivated the display and spoke his final words directly to the counselors still remaining. You have a choice now. You can continue as you are, maintaining a council that fewer and fewer species trust or respect. You can try to suppress the truth and punish those who speak it. Or you can choose to change, to build something better, to create a system that actually serves all species, not just the powerful ones. Min Jun looked at Vorn. Earth sought expulsion from this council. We no longer wish to be part of an institution built on lies. We choose to stand with the Alliance, with species who believe in genuine cooperation and equality, not the false version you've been selling for 12 millennia. He turned and walked back to his seat. The chamber was silent now. The vote was called, but it was meaningless. 23 species had already withdrawn. Another 15 abstained. The council no longer had a quorum to conduct official business. In the silence that followed, something remarkable happened. It lasted 37 minutes, though no one thought to count until later. In 12,000 years of council history, there had never been silence like this. Not in victory, not in defeat, not in triumph or tragedy. It was the silence of an institution realizing it had lost all moral authority, the silence of the powerful finally understanding that power without legitimacy is meaningless. The silence that comes when comfortable lies can no longer hide from uncomfortable truths. High Magistrate Vorn stood at his podium, looking out at a chamber that was emptying before his eyes. He had ruled the council for 80 years. He had seen it as the pinnacle of civilization, the guardian of galactic order. He had genuinely believed that everything he did was necessary and right. Now he saw it for what it really was. And the weight of that recognition, that moment of terrible clarity, was visible in how his shoulders sagged and his scales dimmed to near gray. In that silence, the Galactic Council, as it had existed for 12,000 years, came to an end, not with a bang or a whimper, but with the simple, devastating power of truth, finally spoken and impossible to deny. 1 year later, Min Jun stood in a very different chamber. The Free Species Alliance headquarters on Unity Station was smaller than the old council chamber had been, and deliberately so. The seats were arranged in a circle, all at the same level. There were no elevated podiums for senior members, no separation between powerful and weak. Every species, regardless of how long they had been spacefaring or how many worlds they controlled, had an equal voice. Today they were welcoming their 67th member. The Paresh, a species of small, furry beings who had just achieved FTL travel 3 months ago, were being formally inducted into the Alliance. Their representative, a nervous female named Tika, stood at the center of the circle. "The parish people accept the terms of Alliance membership," Tika said in her soft, chirping voice. "We pledge to participate in mutual defense, to share knowledge freely, and to treat all species with dignity and respect." Talim, now co-chair of the Alliance alongside Min-jun, responded from her water tank. "And the Alliance pledges to you the same. Your voice will be heard equally with all others, regardless of your size or your age as a spacefaring civilization. Welcome, friends." The chamber filled with sounds of approval in dozens of languages. Min-jun smiled. A year ago, he had wondered if this would work. Could species truly cooperate as equals? Could a system built on trust and transparency actually function? The answer, so far, was yes. After the ceremony, Min-jun walked with Su-yeon through Unity Station's observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see ships from across the galaxy docked at the station. Kalari transports, Myrani cargo vessels, human science ships, and dozens of others, all moving freely in Alliance space. "The shared growth protocols are working even better than we hoped," Su-yeon reported. She carried a datapad showing economic figures. "The Kalari economy has grown by 300% since they joined. Myrani workers are earning real wages for the first time in 40 years, and the Dulcran cultural renaissance is spreading across 50 systems." "What about the species from the old council who have applied to join us?" Min-jun asked. 17 applications so far. The Relathi membership was approved last month, obviously. The Fennec coalition is going through the process now. Su-yeon paused. The Saxari hegemony has also applied, which is causing some debate. Min-jun nodded. The Saxari had been hardliners in the old council, benefiting greatly from the exploitative systems. Their application for Alliance membership had raised difficult questions. Could former exploiters be trusted to cooperate as equals? "What does the membership committee recommend?" he asked. "They're split, but the majority opinion is that we should allow it, with conditions. Full transparency of all Saxari economic operations for 5 years. Active participation in helping rebuild species they previously exploited. And genuine cultural change demonstrated through actions, not just words." "Seems fair," Min-jun said. "The whole point of the Alliance is that anyone can change if they're willing to do the work." They reached a section of the observation deck where a memorial had been placed. Images of the 847 Kalari who had died in the Council Peacekeepers' attack were displayed on a wall of light. Min-jun stopped in front of it, as he always did when he passed this way. Talim floated up beside him in her mobile tank. "You come here often," she observed. "I need to remember why we did this," Min-jun replied quietly. "Sometimes, when I'm dealing with membership disputes or economic negotiations, I start to feel like I'm just doing politics again. Then I come here and remember, we didn't do this for politics. We did it because people were dying and suffering, and the powerful were calling it necessary." "They were my people," Talim said softly. "Children I knew, families I had spoken with. They believed they were building a new future for Kayla. Instead, they became martyrs for galactic change." "Their deaths meant something," Su-yeon said. "They showed the galaxy what the Council really was. Without that moment, many species would never have found the courage to leave." "I know," Talim agreed. "But I still wish they could have lived to see what we built instead." They stood in silence for a moment, honoring the dead. Then Talim turned to Min-jun. "What news of the old council? Do they still meet?" "They do," Min-jun said. About 40 species remained loyal, mostly those whose power structures would collapse without the old systems. High Magistrate Vorn still presides, though from what our intelligence suggests, it's a shadow of what it was. They make proclamations that no one follows, They pass resolutions that no one enforces. Irrelevant, Suyan added. The galaxy has moved on. Later that week, Captain Jiwoo Choi arrived at Unity Station aboard the Witness. The old survey ship had been refitted and upgraded, now serving as the flagship of the Alliance Protection Fleet. But its mission had changed. Instead of surveying dead worlds, it now sought out species on the verge of achieving FTL capability. Jiwoo met with Min-jun in his office, which was much smaller and simpler than the embassy suite he had once occupied at Zenith Prime. "We've located another one," she reported. "The Torani, a species in the Delta Quadrant. They're about 5 years away from FTL, based on our observations of their technology development." "What's the situation on their world?" Min-jun asked. "Peaceful, mostly. They have some international conflicts, but nothing catastrophic. Their planet has substantial deposits of carotene, which is becoming important for the new generation of FTL drives." Jiwoo pulled up a holographic display showing the Torani world. Under the old council system, they would have been marked for immediate regulatory oversight as soon as they achieved FTL. "But under our system?" Suyan prompted. "We watch and wait," Jiwoo said. "When they achieve FTL and make first contact, we'll be there to greet them, not to exploit them, not to regulate them, but to offer genuine friendship and support." Min-jun looked at the display showing the Torani world. Somewhere down there, people were living their lives, completely unaware that the galaxy was watching and waiting to welcome them properly. "Make sure we're ready. I want our first contact teams prepared with translation protocols, cultural briefings, and gift packages, and make absolutely sure they understand that everything we offer comes with no strings attached." "Already done," Jiwoo confirmed. "The Torani will never know how close they came to being exploited like the Kalari and Myrani were. They'll just know that when they reached for the stars, the galaxy reached back with friendship." 3 months later, Min-jun received an unexpected visitor. A small, unmarked ship requested permission to dock at Unity Station, and its passenger asked for a private meeting with the Alliance co-chairs. Security was concerned, but Min-jun agreed. The visitor was matriarch Sheena of the Relathi. She looked older than when Min-jun had seen her last, which had been at her species' formal induction into the Alliance. She moved slowly but with dignity to the private meeting room. "Matriarch," Min-jun greeted her warmly, "this is unexpected. Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly," Sheena said, settling into a seat designed for Relathi physiology. "But I wanted to speak with you personally, away from official channels, about Vorn." Min-jun exchanged glances with Talim, who had joined the meeting. "What about him?" "He sent me a message. Private, encrypted. He wanted to know—" Sheena paused, as if the words were difficult. "He wanted to know if the Alliance would accept the Thexian Imperium as a member." The silence that followed was profound. The Thexians had been the architects of the Old Council's most exploitative policies. Vorn himself had overseen the regulations that had crushed dozens of species. And now he was asking to join the system he had tried to destroy. "Why?" Talim asked, her tentacles moving in patterns of confusion. "Because the Thexian homeworld is in crisis," Sheena explained. "Their young people are refusing to support the old government. Their military is fragmenting. Their economy is collapsing because they built it on exploiting others, and there's no one left to exploit. Vorn sees that the Imperium will fall unless they change, and he's finally admitting, at least privately, that the old ways were wrong." Min-jun thought about this carefully. Vorn had been the face of everything the Alliance opposed. Forgiving him, welcoming his people, would be difficult for many Alliance members, especially the Kalari, whose children Vorn's policies had gotten killed. "What do you think, Ta'alim?" he asked. The Kalari co-chair was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "I think about those children every day. I think about how they died because people like Vorn believed power mattered more than lives. Part of me wants to tell him that the Thexians deserve to suffer as we suffered." She paused, her tentacles moving in complex patterns that the translator rendered as deep emotional conflict. "But then I think about what we built here. We built the Alliance on the idea that any species can change, can grow, can become better. If we deny that possibility to the Thexians, we become exactly what we opposed. We become the ones who decide some people deserve opportunity and others don't." "So you would support accepting them?" Minjun asked gently. "I would support giving them the same chance we give everyone else. They must acknowledge their crimes. They must make amends to those they hurt. They must prove through actions, not words, that they have genuinely changed. It will take years, maybe decades. But if they are willing to do the work—" Talim's voice was heavy with emotion. "Then yes, even them, especially them. Because showing that even the worst can change might be the most powerful statement we can make about what we believe." Minjun turned to Sheena. "Tell Vorn that the Alliance does not turn away those who genuinely seek to change. But the price will be high. Complete transparency, acknowledgement of past crimes, active work to repair the damage they caused. If the Thexians are willing to humble themselves and truly commit to equality and justice, we will consider their application." Sheena nodded slowly. "I will tell him. I do not know if he will accept those terms. Pride runs deep in Thexian culture." "Then they will learn what humanity learned long ago," Minjun said. "That pride matters less than doing what is right." 5 years after the Galactic Council fell silent, Dr. Soo-Yeon Kim stood on the surface of a world in the Delta Quadrant. Behind her, a team of Alliance diplomats and scientists waited patiently. In front of her, a T'Rani ship was descending from orbit. It was the first FTL-capable vessel their species had ever built. The ship landed, and the airlock opened. 3 T'Rani emerged, looking around at the alien landscape with wonder and fear. They were bipedal, with iridescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Right now, they were showing patterns of nervousness and excitement. Soo-Yeon stepped forward, hands open and empty, her expression warm and welcoming. She had practiced this moment for months, had studied T'Rani culture and language, had prepared everything needed to make this first contact perfect. "Welcome to the galaxy," she said in carefully practiced T'Rani. "The real one, where your voice matters, where you will be treated as equals, where your future is yours to determine." The lead T'Rani, whose name Soo-Yeon would soon learn was Koresh, stared at her with eyes that reflected the colors of their sun. "You have been waiting for us?" they asked in wonder. "Yes," Soo-Yeon confirmed. "We wanted to be here when you reached the stars, to offer you friendship, partnership, and protection, freely given with no strings attached, because we remember what it was like when others tried to take advantage of our newness to the galaxy. And we promised ourselves that no species would face that again." Koresh's skin rippled through patterns of blue and gold, which Soo-Yeon's research told her indicated deep emotion and gratitude. "We did not know what to expect when we left our world. We hoped for friends, but feared we might find enemies." "You found friends," Soo-Yeon assured them. "You found a galaxy full of species who believe in cooperation over exploitation, in equality over hierarchy, in truth over comfortable lies. You found a place where even the smallest voice is heard and valued." As the sun set on that distant world, casting long shadows across the landing field, Soo-Yeon thought about Minjun's words from years ago, about how humanity had stopped asking for permission to do what was right. About how they had retaliated against injustice, not with weapons, but with truth. The Galactic Council had fallen silent, defeated not by force, but by the simple, powerful act of refusing to accept exploitation as normal. And in that silence, something better had grown. Something that welcomed the T'Rani with open hands and honest hearts. something that proved that another way was possible. The galaxy would never be perfect. There would always be conflicts and challenges. But it was better than it had been. And that, Suyon thought as she welcomed the Tarani into the Alliance family, was worth every moment of the struggle to achieve it.